Wheel spacers. Are they safe? Well, I don't know. There's so many people out there that say they're dangerous. There's so many people out there that say they're safe. I'm planning on finding out for myself. I've always changed out the factory rims on my other trucks because I've never really been that fond of them. Why am I even considering wheel spacers on the Trail Boss? Well, the wheels that come on them look pretty daggum good. The problem with them is they don't give me the stance I want, which is just a little bit of poke right outside the fender wheel. So I came across KSP Performance wheel spacers, which are about 150 bucks, and that's about all I'd want to spend on the same aluminum spacer that the other guys are charging $400 or $500 for. So my ultimate goal here is to see if I like the spacers and I can actually trust spacers. KSP Performance recommends some red thread lock. Well, I'm actually not going to use that today because I want to torque them to the right specs and then go back, check them, and see if they moved. They recommend driving around for about 100 miles and then rechecking them. It will give me a lot more confidence riding around on those wheel spacers if they didn't move at all. The biggest thing in my research is make sure you get Hub Centric Wheel Spacers because you don't want it to be lug centric and move all around because that's just not good for anybody. You can really go cheap on spacers. You can go really expensive on spacers. This KSP Performance wheel spacer is right in the middle and it's exactly where I want to be. When you get the wheel spacers in, make sure you read the factory recommended torque specs. Some people out there just torque it to what the lugs are, and that is incorrect. You want to make sure that you torque it to whatever the manual says because you don't want to over tighten it. You can actually imprint the aluminum and that's going to be a disaster. Now, before we get started on the install, I do want to say at this point in time, I don't know if I trust the wheel spacers. That's why I really want to put these on and see how aggressive it makes the truck look and find out for myself if I trust driving my child around with wheel spacers on. With that being said, let's go ahead and unbox these KSP Performance 2-inch wheel spacers and get them installed on the Trail Boss. I've got this spacer unboxed. Let's take a closer look at it. It's got this nice blue finish. It's got KSP on the side. The quality looks great and it's definitely heavy. You can see that this spacer is hub centric. That's going to be a lot better fitment and it's going to be a lot more secure. Moving on to the studs, they seem pretty solid. Make sure you check them out thoroughly to make sure they weren't broken during shipping. Here are the nuts they send out with the spacer. So these are what you'll use on the factory studs to secure the spacer to the hub. Here's a top side view of the spacer. So let's go ahead and get them installed on the truck. All right, before I work on this side, I want to show you what it looks like first, give you a side-by-side comparison. And here is the finished product. So that looks awesome. It looks way more aggressive. It sticks out just past the fender exactly where I want it. So that looks awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this other side. Let's go ahead and take a look at it one more time so you can see how pushed in it is. So let's go ahead and make this side look as good as the other side. Well, I was worried about this, and guess what? It is rubbing really bad. So that is the front. When you turn it to the left, it rubs that back fender. Let me see what I can do to make this work. I took the screw that holds this fender liner to this little metal bracket behind it, and it looks like that's pretty much all it does is holds that fender in. So it looks pretty easy to take off. I can't see that it really matters if it's gone. So there's a bolt here, and there's 2 bolts right here, and then there's 1 more bolt up here. So let me get that off and see if that fixes our issue. All right, well, with that off, it does fix the issue. You can see how close of a gap that tire is, barely almost touching the frame. I think it's going to be okay, but you can ride like this, but it is a really small gap. Well, I'm glad I got that rubbing issue fixed because this looks awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and drive around for 100 miles and then we'll retorque the spacer and see if it needs it. All right, guys, it's been a few days. I've driven 100 miles, so it's time to take the tires off and check the torque on the spacers. All right, I got all the lugs off. I want y'all to see how hard this is to move now that it's been on there. I can't even pull the tire off. It's actually stuck on that aluminum spacer, which in my book is a good thing. Let's see if it clicks without moving any of the nuts. All right, well, that's awesome. None of them moved and they all clicked with the torque wrench. So that's a great thing. I drove around for what they said, about 100 miles, and I got no movement. So I've retorqued it. Let me go ahead and redo all the rest of them, and I'll let you know if any of them moved. All right, so I just finished up this front right tire and no movement there. So I'm gonna move on to the backs. Starting to get a little dark outside, so I may have to turn on some underlighting or something to help me out. All right, well, I got some great ambient lighting to help me out, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish up. All right, again, the tire's pretty stuck on there, so that's pretty good that it kind of locks the tire on to the spacer. All right, so what am I checking for here when I take the wheel off? I just kind of want to make sure that it's not moving around, it's not loose at all. I want to check the studs, make sure they seem good, and then I want to make sure that there's no gap here. Everything looks fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on, check the torque, make sure that the back is good as well. All right, well, this one's looking good, so I'm going to move on to the next one. But beforehand, I wanted to show you guys this red caliper paint. I did this about a year ago. I had a couple of you ask about it. How is it holding up? It seems to be pretty fine, but that's how she looks up close. All right, so this is really cool. I've got my automatic flashlight, my rock light, so I can check to make sure my torque is good and I am set. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure this last one is good. All right, well, this one passed the test as well. None of them moved. None of them were affected by vibration from driving down the road. All right, guys, well, I'm finished up here tonight. It is a school night. I've got a child now, so I'm gonna finish up tomorrow and give you my final thoughts. Well, I've always wanted to do that. So check out the truck one more time. Here it is. I love these 2-inch wheel spacers. They look great. I actually feel a lot more comfortable riding around with them now that I retorqued them. So I am gonna go back and retorque them at about 1,000 miles, check it. But yeah, as of right now, I'm really liking these. I do want to tell you that I did use a zip tie in the back fender liner in order to keep it out of the way of the tire. If y'all are wanting to run wheel spacers on your truck, just make sure you're safe about it and read through the manual. I appreciate y'all watching this. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do so. Until next time, see y'all.